Hey guys, tonight, we're slipping into a snow-blanketed forest where breath freezes mid-air, and every crack of a twig could mean the end. You're hunched in the drift's finger's stiff rifle tucked into your chest for warmth, not that it helps. The trees are skeletal, stripped by winter, but somewhere in this silence, a man waits. He doesn't speak, he barely blinks, he doesn't even use a scope. You're in Simo Häyhä's territory now. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your city and the current time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're watching from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You crawl through knee-deep snow breath, fogging the edge of your scarf. Finland's in a state of frozen war, and it's 1939. The Soviet Union has decided it wants a bit more land, and you unlucky soul are stuck in the winter war. It's cold enough to freeze eyelids shut, but that doesn't stop Simo Häyhä. He's already taken out 5 enemies today, maybe more. He doesn't keep track hourly. You'd think snipers would use scopes, right? Not this guy. Häyhä prefers his trusty iron sights. WWII, because scope lenses reflect sunlight, and in this dazzling white landscape, that tiny glint could get you killed. Plus, scoped rifles sit higher on the cheek. Your breath fogs it up. He learned to adapt. He always adapts. Wrapped in a white camouflage from head to toe, he melts into the snow like he was born in it. He packs the snow in front of his rifle barrel to muffle the shot. He even holds snow in his mouth to keep his breath from showing in the cold air. And here you are, mouth open, teeth chattering like a wind-up toy. He hasn't blinked in 5 minutes. Häyhä's kill count during the Winter War is legendary. Most place it around 505 confirmed kills with a rifle. Add in another couple hundred from his submachine gun, and yeah, he's practically a one-man army. Historians still argue whether that number is fully accurate. Some Soviet records were, let's say, lost, and the Finns weren't big on flaunting their stats. Still, no one disputes he was lethal. He moved silently between snowbanks and forests, never staying in one spot for too long. He knew the land like it whispered to him. Soviet soldiers would drop dead without warning, without a sound, sometimes from hundreds of meters away. Their comrades never saw it coming. You shift slightly, but the snow betrays you with a soft crunch. If you were a Soviet conscript, this would be the moment your story ends. But you're lucky. Tonight, you're just observing safely. There's something eerie about the way he worked. No bravado, no dramatic speeches. Just ice-cold precision. While others bunkered down, Häyhä would lie in the snow for hours, motionless, waiting. Think about that next time you get antsy waiting in a checkout line. Here's a quirky detail: he was only 5'3", small, compact, and nearly invisible in the snow. They called him the White Death. Not exactly a nickname you earn by being friendly. In March of 1940, his reign almost ended. A Soviet soldier managed to blast his lower face with an exploding bullet. Häyhä was left with half his jaw shattered. Most people would have died from that alone, especially out there. But not Simo. He woke up days later after slipping into a coma and survived. That's right, took a bullet to the face, and still lived to tell the tale. Well, sort of. He didn't talk much after that. After the war, he didn't write a memoir, didn't pose for glory shots, and never chased fame. He just retreated to a quiet life of farming and hunting, ironically, in the same forests where he once made history. He lived until 2002, passing away at 96 years old. Probably with a loaded rifle still within reach. Historians still debate whether Häyhä's success was pure skill, raw instinct, or just a terrifying amount of patience. Most likely it was all three and a little something else. Maybe you can't teach what he had. Maybe it was the land itself working through him. You shiver again. Not from cold this time, but from the realization that you've just stepped through the snow into the mind of someone who understood death not as an act of cruelty, but as a practiced craft. You're breathing dust now. The cold is gone, replaced by a thick, sour stink of smoke and crumbling concrete. You're in Stalingrad. The air is hot with gunpowder and burnt metal, and if you blink too long, a sniper might turn your skull into a cautionary tale. Buildings look like broken teeth lining the banks of the Volga. And somewhere perched high in this skeletal maze is a man named Vasily Zaitsev. He sees you before you even touch your rifle. You duck behind a rusted pipe. There's a German soldier ahead cautiously peering around a hole blasted into the side of a factory wall. You blink, and when you look again, he's dropped. No sound, no warning, just the inevitable kiss of gravity. This was Zaitsev's playground. He turned the ruins of Stalingrad into a sniper's paradise or nightmare, depending on which side you were on. With his Mosin Nagant rifle, he moved through the bombed-out husks of buildings like a ghost with a kill streak. Vasily Zaitsev wasn't born into war. He was a shepherd raised in the Ural Mountains. He used to shoot wolves from ridiculous distances to protect his flock. That's where he learned patience, precision, and how to calculate wind speed by licking a finger and watching snowflakes tilt. Okay, that last part's probably dramatized, but still, by the time the Nazis rolled into Stalingrad in 1942, Vasily was ready. His official tally, 225, confirmed kills during the Battle of Stalingrad alone. Some estimates go higher, but historians still argue whether the true number was inflated for Soviet propaganda. What's undeniable is that his shots changed the tide of morale. He wasn't just eliminating targets, he was creating fear. And the Nazis noticed. Enter Major Erwin König, or maybe not. Legend has it that the Germans sent their own elite sniper to take Zaitsev out. The two would engage in a deadly days-long game of hide-and-seek through the skeleton of a shattered city. Buildings became traps. Sunlight on a scope was a fatal mistake. They stalked each other like big cats who read Sun Tzu. Problem is, some historians claim König never existed. Soviet documents say one thing, post-war accounts say another. Some believe he was a composite character, invented to boost morale. Others are convinced the duel happened exactly as described, right down to Zaitsev baiting König into exposing himself with a helmet placed on a stick. True or not, it makes a heck of a story. And it cemented Zaitsev as a legend. One bullet, one breath, one decisive end. Here's a lesser-known detail. Zaitsev didn't just pull triggers. He trained an entire squad of snipers. Dozens of them. He passed on his techniques, strategies, an eerie calm like a master sculptor with a block of granite. These students went on to kill thousands of enemy soldiers combined. Imagine that ripple effect. You take one shepherd, give him a rifle, and suddenly he's the head of a sniper school that terrifies the most mechanized military force in the world. You slink through a hallway now, one that smells of mildew and ash. The walls are cratered. Glass crunches underfoot. You imagine what it must have been like waiting for hours just for one silhouette to line up in your sights. Time stretching like melted tar. One breath in. Exhale. Squeeze. Then stillness again. The Battle of Stalingrad was about more than just bullets. It was about psychological warfare, survival, and cold-blooded endurance. The snipers became symbols of everything. The city refused to give up resilience, patience, and utter refusal to die quietly. Zaitsev survived the war. Barely. A mortar shell nearly blinded him, but surgeons restored his sight. And what did he do after the world's most infamous sniper showdown? He went back to being a technician in Kiev, lived a long life, faded into a quiet apartment like a ghost returning to smoke. You get the feeling he never really left the ruins of Stalingrad, though. Part of him still prowls those buildings, still waits in silence. Just one more shot, one more exhale, one more breath away from disappearing. And here's something oddly human. When Zaitsev died in 1991, his remains were later reburied in Stalingrad, now Volgograd, with full military honors. Right where he'd once crouched for hours beneath collapsed roofs and twisted girders. Like the city itself knew exactly where he belonged. You glance up toward a shattered window, sunlight bleeding through the jagged glass. For a split second, you think you see the gleam of a rifle barrel. You blink, it's gone. Probably just a trick of the light. Probably. You're belly down in the mud now, sweat running down your spine even though it's barely past sunrise. A dragonfly zips by your ear, but you don't flinch. Can't. Not when the next breath might be your last. You're deep in Vietnam, and somewhere in this green hell, Carlos Hathcock is already watching you. He's not a ghost. He's worse, he's real. You squint across a hazy rice field. Every blade of grass looks the same. Every bush, every mound of dirt could be a man in disguise. And that's exactly what Hathcock counted on. He was the U.S. Marine Corps' top sniper during the Vietnam War, racking up 93 confirmed kills, and likely many more that were never logged. Historians still argue about the true number, but even if it's only 93, that's 93 people who never heard the shot that killed them. Carlos didn't come from some elite bloodline of warriors. He grew up in Arkansas shooting squirrels and birds with a .22 rifle before he was tall enough to reach the kitchen sink. He joined the Marines young and quickly became obsessed with marksmanship. There's a story of him as a kid walking around in a WWII helmet his dad brought home pretending to be a soldier. That helmet might have been oversized, but the mindset fit perfectly. Fast forward to Vietnam. Hathcock was so feared that the North Vietnamese army put a $30,000 bounty on his head. Most bounties were around $8,000, so yeah, he was basically considered the final boss. They even gave him a nickname White Feather because he wore one in his bush hat. Not the best camouflage choice, you'd think, but Hathcock wasn't hiding. He wanted them to know he was out there. And here's the kicker: he made one of the most legendary sniper crawls in history. Nearly 1,500 yards through enemy territory over the course of 4 days. That's not a typo. 4 days of inching forward on his stomach through swamps across enemy trails past patrols. He didn't eat, barely drank. He let ants bite him thorns, tear into his arms, and his entire body rot under the heat. All for one shot. And when he finally lined it up through the scope, he pulled the trigger. One high-ranking officer gone, mission complete. Then he turned around and crawled all the way back out. By the end of it, he was hallucinating. But he didn't flinch, didn't fold. Just aimed, fired, and disappeared. Like the forest itself had decided to spit out death. One a strange tidbit: Hathcock once took out an enemy sniper through the enemy's own scope. That's not dramatic writing. That's real. He saw the glint of a lens, took the shot, and the bullet traveled down the tube into the other guy's eye. There's physics involved that we won't bore you with, but let's just say it's so rare it's basically mythical. Video game level accuracy. Yet, he did it. Carlos wasn't in it for the kill count. He hated killing, said he never enjoyed it, but he believed in protecting his fellow Marines. To him, every shot meant one less man who might not come home. That's how he framed it. That's how he kept his sanity. Later in the war, his story almost ended in fire. Literally. He pulled wounded Marines from a burning armored vehicle suffering third-degree burns across more than 40% of his body. Most people would have died. He didn't. He limped back, refused to quit, and eventually trained the next generation of Marine snipers. After the war, he dealt with pain, both physical and emotional. Multiple surgeries, PTSD. But through it all, he kept that same steel in his voice, that calm confidence. He helped create the Marine Corps' Scout Sniper School and passed on what he knew not just about shooting, but about surviving. There's a moment somewhere in the jungle when the noise fades. The bugs quiet. The wind stills. That's when you know someone like Hathcock is nearby. He didn't shoot often, but when he did, it was final. And here's something a little odd. He loved motorcycles. Loved speed. When he wasn't lying still for hours waiting for one perfect shot, he wanted the opposite, fast, loud, wind-in-the-teeth kind of freedom. There's poetry in that. When he died in 1999, he left behind more than a list of kills. He left behind a method, a legacy, and a mindset. His motto wasn't flashy. It was simple. You shoot to live. And every time you look through a scope, now every time you steady your breath, whether on a rifle range or just staring out a window, part of him is still teaching you how to focus. You shift slightly in the mud, and for a moment you swear you see a white feather drift past. Could be coincidence. Could be wind. Or maybe you were just spotted. You're sweating again, but this time it's not just from the heat. You're walking point on patrol boots, sinking into the thick Vietnamese jungle floor. Every step feels wrong. Every tree might be hiding something. The foliage breathes the vine's pulse, and there's that feeling crawling up your spine, the one that whispers you're being watched. And you are. But this isn't Hathcock's story anymore. This is about someone else, someone you don't even get a name for. The North Vietnamese sniper with no confirmed identity, no photographs, no official service record, no memoir. Just ghost stories whispered among American troops. Stories of a figure who never misses, never speaks, and never leaves a trail. Some called him the Cobra. Others just called him Death. You might never know what he looked like. But the men in your unit, they believed in him. Every time someone was taken out from the shadows with a single silent shot, they'd nod and mutter, "It was him." This phantom sniper didn't play by any rules. He was a master of terrain. Some say he moved only at night. Some say he'd lie buried in the same spot for days, just waiting for a soldier to forget his training. The shot always came from nowhere. No sound, no glint, no second chance. You pass an empty clearing, and someone behind you coughs nervously. Your squad goes silent. The guy next to you lowers his rifle just for a second. That's when you hear it crack. One shot, he drops. You hit the dirt. Everyone scrambles for cover, yelling, firing in every direction, but it's useless. You never see the shooter. And that's how it always goes. Some believe this was psychological warfare as much as anything. Fear works fast when it has a sniper's aim. What makes this tale different is that there's no official record. Historians still argue whether this mysterious sniper or snipers really existed as a single person, or if he was just a composite myth that grew over time, stitched together from fear and campfire whispers. But the kills were real. The body bags were real. The silence after the shot, too real. There's one story from a platoon near the Mekong Delta. They swore someone was following them, picking off the squad one by one over the course of a week. Always during meal breaks, always when helmets came off. They said the sniper carved tally marks into nearby trees just to mess with their heads. Could have been local superstition. Could have been someone playing tricks. Or maybe he was just that confident. Here's your fringe detail of the night. Some Marines started wearing playing cards under their helmets like amulets. Supposedly, the Ace of Spades scared off the Viet Cong. Superstition meets desperation. One less thing to worry about when you're trying to stay alive. You wipe your brow. It feels like you've been crawling for hours. You remember the stories of men swearing they saw eyes in the trees. Eyes that blinked once, then vanished. Could be monkeys. Could be nerves. But nobody's laughing when another man goes down and the jungle answers with nothing but the hiss of insects. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. American forces had thermal scopes, air superiority, helicopters, and radios. But none of that mattered when a single well-hidden shooter could undo months of planning. Snipers like this one turned high-tech troops into helpless targets. War isn't always about who has more firepower. Sometimes it's about who can wait longer, breathe quieter, and pull the trigger first. You shift behind a tree trunk, heart pounding like a drum line. You keep thinking, what if he's still out there? What if he never left? The jungle doesn't age like we do. It's still green, still breathing, still hiding things. Decades after the war, stories kept surfacing. Locals talk about a man who lives alone in the hills, never seen, never heard, but his old rifle's always freshly oiled. Some believe it's just village folklore. Others think it's him, the one who outlasted everything, the man who became legend. What's terrifying is how effective he was without ever becoming famous. No medals, no parades, no interviews. Just the sound of silence and the math of a bullet's arc through damp air. And maybe that's the point. The best snipers aren't the ones with the most kills. They're the ones you never see, never hear, and never forget. You glance over your shoulder. Nothing there, just trees and vines. Still, you can't shake the feeling that someone is watching from deep within the green. Now you're standing in a blizzard of camera flashes. Not on a battlefield this time, but on a press tour. A woman in uniform, composed and sharp-eyed, stands surrounded by curious American journalists who seem more fascinated by her gender than her kill count. You're meeting Lyudmila Pavlichenko, the deadliest female sniper in history. And judging by the way she just outwitted a reporter's sexist question with a smirk and a one-liner, she's also got a perfect aim with words. Let's back up. It's 1941. Nazi Germany is storming into the Soviet Union, and the Eastern Front is becoming a meat grinder. You're not in Stalingrad this time. You're in Odessa and later Sevastopol, where bullets fly like angry bees, and the trees whisper secrets to those who know how to listen. Pavlichenko, just 25 years old, steps into this chaos with a bolt-action rifle and eyes that don't flinch. She doesn't sneak. She doesn't blink. She just counts. By the time the war pulls her out of the front lines, her confirmed tally stands at 309 kills. That's not a typo. That's real. 309. Historians still argue whether the actual number might have been higher. After all, not every shot gets a signature. But the Red Army had no problem verifying enough to label her a national treasure and a walking nightmare for the Germans. Here's the quirky twist. Before the war, she was a university student. A history major, no less. So technically, she went from studying dead kings to creating a few casualties of her own. Talk about immersive learning. She trained as a sniper after joining a paramilitary sports club in Kiev. When Germany invaded, she didn't beg for a clerical role, she demanded to fight. At the front, commanders were skeptical. A woman with a rifle. But she proved herself within a week, taking down multiple enemy soldiers in quick succession. She didn't just meet expectations, she obliterated them. One story has her lying motionless in a crater for over 24 hours, waiting out an enemy sniper duel. Neither moved, neither blinked. Eventually, the German made a tiny mistake, just enough to expose part of his helmet. That was it. One breath, one shot. Duel over. Later, during the brutal siege of Sevastopol, she was wounded by mortar fire. Twice. Still returned. She often worked in pairs training new recruits while continuing to rack up kills. She didn't go into a trance when she fired. She stayed human, felt every squeeze of the trigger. She once told an interviewer, "Every German who remains alive will kill women, children, and old folks. Dead Germans are harmless." When her body couldn't keep up any more shrapnel injuries and stress piling up the Soviet center to the United States, not to recover, but to rally support. That's when she found herself on stage next to Eleanor Roosevelt being introduced to American audiences who couldn't decide if they were more stunned by her record or her lipstick. A journalist asked if she wore makeup on the battlefield. She shot back, "There is no rule that a woman cannot fight and look good at the same time." You can almost hear the click of a verbal headshot. But that trip revealed something else. For all her calm under pressure, the war had carved deep grooves into her soul. She saw friends die. She killed face to face, up close, in silence. That stays with you. After the war, she returned to academia. She never killed again. Taught history instead, like she was putting all those ghosts in order, finally giving them timelines and context. But the rifle never left her in spirit. It was always there behind the bookshelves. Fun fact you wouldn't expect, she had a weakness for opera. Loved it. Said it helped her think. Imagine that the same woman who once cleared a ridge of Nazi scouts, now quietly listening to arias about lost love and fate. She died in 1974, buried with full military honors. But ask around certain places in Kyiv, and old-timers still whisper about her. Still walk a little taller, knowing she once called their city home. You shift your weight now, and the snow crunches beneath your boots. In your hands, you imagine that heavy rifle wooden stock chilled from the wind. You glance to your left and see her ghost form calm and alert, watching the tree line. You realize she never really disappeared. She's out there still in every woman who refuses to be underestimated. In every sniper who lies still longer than pain should allow. And just maybe in that second voice in your head telling you to wait. Be patient. Watch for the blink. You're crouched in a hallway that used to be a home. The wallpaper is scorched. Toys and glass crunch under your boots. A beam of light cuts through a bullet-pocked window, but you know better than to step into it. This is Sarajevo, 1992. Welcome to Sniper Alley, a place where the shadows aren't just dark, they're armed. You ease forward, back pressed to the wall. Outside, people run between buildings like they're in a video game on nightmare mode. 1 second too slow, one wrong footstep, and someone from above takes the shot. A mother, a delivery man, a child. No one is safe, especially not in the open. Sniper Alley wasn't one street. It was a nickname, a warning, and a citywide death sentence all rolled into one. The main boulevards of Sarajevo became shooting galleries for Serbian snipers who perched on high-rises with scopes and rifles watching the city unravel from above. The snipers weren't just picking off soldiers. They were targeting civilians on purpose. And you've got maybe 5 seconds to cross the intersection ahead. Historians still argue whether this was psychological warfare strategy or just cruelty. But whatever the motive, the effect was devastating. The city's civilians became chess pieces on a board tilted by terror. Every alley, every shadow, every crossing was a question of life or death. The irony sniper alley cut through the center of town, so if you wanted to get food, water, or medical help, you had to gamble your life. One of the most disturbing truths that these weren't faceless shooters hiding in a distant war. They were neighbors. Many snipers had once lived in the same city as the people they were now targeting. Same neighborhoods, same grocery stores, same playgrounds. Then the war started, and the rooftops became hunting blinds. You peek out from behind the wall. The street is empty, but it's never truly silent here. Somewhere high above a barrel is aimed. You can't see it. You never do. Quirky detail. The locals adapted with dark creativity. They called certain safe crossing spots sniper-free zones and spray-painted warnings on walls. Some even made a sport of running across, timing the sprint's challenging fate. Others tied ropes to boxes or makeshift sleds dragging food across intersections like it was some twisted carnival game. A few residents started dressing as clowns or animals, hoping the absurdity would confuse or deter the snipers. No one laughed. You think you'd be clever under pressure? Try carrying a loaf of bread with a bullseye painted on your chest and a rifle scope somewhere out there, waiting to sneeze. 5 seconds can feel like an eternity. And here, eternity means you're dead. Sarajevo's siege lasted almost 4 years longer than the siege of Stalingrad, longer than anything anyone expected. People lived under constant fear of snipers for 425 days. Think about that. Over 3.5 years where stepping outside was a gamble. And the sun wasn't just hot, it was deadly, because it lit you up like a target. One man, an Olympic skier, used his training to help civilians cross the streets. Another young woman was known for her invisibility. She seemed to slip through sniper zones like smoke. Locals turned to legend because stories were one of the few things snipers couldn't shoot. But it wasn't all one-sided. The defenders of Sarajevo fought back. They had their own snipers perched in hidden nests, eyes scanning for glints of glass or subtle movement on balconies. It was sniper against sniper, a duel played out over months, where patience wasn't just a skill, it was a weapon. A rooftop duel between two snipers could last days. No movement, just breath, just waiting. Until one made a mistake, maybe a cigarette flicked too early, maybe a scope reflection at the wrong time. One heartbeat off. That's all it took. You crouch now in a dark stairwell. Outside, a man dashes across the street holding a plastic bag. You count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the pop. A body falls. People scream. You don't run out to help. You've learned. You wait. Because sometimes the snipers use a first shot as bait, waiting for others to rush in before firing again. And here's your debate of the section. Were the snipers simply executing orders, or were they operating with personal agendas, carrying out hatred shot by shot? Scholars disagree. Some say it was pure military strategy, dominate movement, instill fear. Others insist it was about humiliation, about control, about proving that even everyday survival was a privilege that could be revoked without warning. The snipers weren't just men either. There were female shooters too, some reportedly colder, quieter, and more efficient. War doesn't discriminate. It teaches anyone how to pull a trigger, then leaves them with the memory. After the war, some snipers vanished. Others were tried for war crimes. Some returned to the same streets they once terrorized, walking among the people who remembered. No masks, no apologies. Just time pretending to heal things it never touched. And yet Sarajevo lived. The people endured. Today, the buildings still wear their scars, pockmarks and craters, shattered windows, filled in with mismatched panes. But life moves through the city again. Slowly, carefully, as if still listening for that familiar deadly crack. You step into the sunlight just briefly. It warms your face. You close your eyes. But for a flicker of a moment, you imagine someone's crosshairs tracing your outline. You hold your breath. And then, nothing. No shot. Not today. Now you're somewhere flat and silent, too silent. The kind of silence where even the wind seems to hold its breath. You're lying prone on the cracked surface of a rocky plateau, the sand whipping lightly over your scope. You've been here for hours, barely blinking. No sounds, no distractions, just calculations, just distance. You are Craig Harrison now, and you're about to make the longest confirmed sniper kill in recorded history. Afghanistan, 2009. You're a British Army corporal with the Blues and Royals. You're positioned somewhere in Helmand Province near a dusty ridge with nothing but open air between you and the enemy. Through your scope, you see two Taliban fighters setting up a PKM machine gun, just dots really. Tiny, nearly imperceptible shapes against the backdrop of endless tan. But this isn't guesswork. This is math. Distance to target to the 475 meters. That's about 1.54 miles. Farther than most people can even see clearly, much less shoot accurately. And Harrison isn't using some futuristic railgun, just an L115A3 .338 Lapua Magnum sniper rifle. A bolt-action rifle with a scope of steady breath and the patience of stone. You line it up. Factor in wind-air pressure, altitude, curvature of the earth. Yes, at this distance, you actually have to account for the planet's curve. You hold your breath, settle the crosshairs, and squeeze. The round takes nearly 3 seconds to reach the target. 3 seconds of complete stillness, like the world itself is holding its breath with you. Then impact. One of the insurgents drops instantly. You cycle the bolt. Breathe again. Fire again. Second target down. 2 confirmed kills back to back, both at a distance. So absurd most wouldn't believe it if it weren't documented. A third shot disables the machine gun itself. That's the kind of precision that turns legend into paperwork. Here's the quirky detail. Harrison wasn't some glorified super soldier with a comic book origin. He'd failed out of school, joined the military because it offered structure, and quietly worked his way into a role that required more patience than glory. He didn't even know he'd broken the world record until much later. He was just doing his job. And when interviewed about it, he responded with a shrug and a simple, "I was lucky." But luck doesn't explain the dozens of environmental factors he had to measure, adjust, and somehow internalize while under combat pressure. Luck doesn't calibrate for mirage distortion at that range. That's skill and nerves of absolute iron. Historians still argue whether modern sniper kills at that range are even replicable without ideal conditions. Harrison's shot wasn't just good, it was perfect. Clear air, no wind, bright light, and of course an enemy who happened to stand still for just long enough. It wasn't about heroics, it was about saving lives. Harrison's unit was pinned down, and those machine gunners could have done serious damage if left unchecked. That shot wasn't for a headline, it was for survival. Want another odd little detail? The L115A3 rifle used by Harrison was standard issue for British snipers. Nothing secret, nothing exotic, just glass metal and mastery. The kind of tool that only becomes legendary when it's in the right hands. Now you're still lying prone, cheek resting against the cold stock eyes dry from staring too long without blinking. You imagine what it must be like to wait for that one shot with adrenaline coiled like a viper under your skin and then release. Not a celebration, not a shout, just the quiet click of the bolt, the gentle pat of your breath returning. But Harrison's story doesn't end with that shot. The cost came later. After the tour, he developed severe PTSD. The stillness he once thrived in became suffocating. Crowds made him anxious. Sleep was a luxury. He described being back home, and hearing a car backfire, dropping to the ground without thinking. His mind had been rewired for war, and that doesn't turn off just because you're back in a city full of traffic lights and quiet kitchens. He eventually left the army and started speaking openly about mental health, especially among veterans. Turns out it's easier to shoot a target 2 miles away than it is to admit you're hurting. But Harrison did both, and his voice, soft and steady, became a lifeline for others who felt the same way. You tilt your head slightly, the imaginary scope still resting near your cheekbone. You think about what it takes to be that precise, that calm, that focused. And then to come back from it and live a normal life, if that's even possible. Harrison didn't glamorize his shot. He didn't hang a plaque on the wall. He just carried it quietly, the way snipers carry everything, silently and with weight. That shot stood as the record for years. Eventually, it was broken. A Canadian sniper in 2017 supposedly made a kill at over 3,500 meters. Historians still debate the specifics. Was it confirmed? Were the conditions identical? Does it even count in the same category? But Craig Harrison's shot endures because it wasn't just about distance. It was about being there in that moment, making the impossible seem effortless. You lower the rifle now. The plateau fades. You blink and find yourself back in your own body, staring at your ceiling in the soft light of night. And somewhere out there in an empty desert, the wind still drags sand over a place where a man once made a shot that defied logic. Just you, the rifle, the silence, and the math of fate. You're driving down a narrow road in Northern Ireland, and the rain whispering on your windshield, like it's trying to tell you something. The countryside stretches wide and green around you, quiet in that unsettling way, like everything's holding still just a little too long. Your unit's convoy rolls forward slowly, tense, watching the rooftops. But it won't matter, not when the shot comes from a mile away. This is the era of the Troubles, the 1990s. British forces patrolling hostile streets, bomb scares, checkpoints, and somewhere in the shadows of South Armagh, a sniper waits. Not a battlefield marksman with medals and press tours. A ghost with a Barrett .50 caliber rifle. His identity unknown. His signature unmistakable. They just call him the IRA sniper. Some say it was one man. Others say it was a team rotating in and out, using the same rifle like a cursed baton. But all agree on one thing when he struck. There was no warning, only the aftermath. You could be armored, trained armed to the teeth. Didn't matter. If he picked you, you dropped. You lean back in your seat now, eyes darting between hedgerows. The stories float in your head. The soldier hit while standing behind bulletproof glass. The shot punched through anyway, massive caliber, insane velocity. The Barrett M82A1 wasn't designed for subtlety. It was built to disable vehicles, knock down walls. This guy used it to dismantle human beings from extreme range. One of the most infamous strikes happened in 1997. A Lance bombardier standing watch near Cross Maglen was killed by a single round, fired from over 1,000 yards away. Clean, cold, professional. The British military responded with helicopter surveillance, increased patrols. But the sniper was already gone. No footprints, no brass, no sound except for the final echo. Here's the fringe detail. The sniper often fired just once. Then silence. One bullet. No follow-up. Almost like a signature move. And that one shot always seemed to land. The weapon became legendary in its own right. The Barrett .50 cal is nearly 5 feet long and weighs over 30 pounds fully loaded. You don't just sneak around with it under your coat. You need planning, timing, escape routes, and someone who understands patience as well as physics. Historians still debate whether the shooter was trained abroad, maybe in Libya, where the IRA received weapons and training, or if he was just a local with unnatural talent. The British Army called him highly skilled. The newspapers called him elusive. The troops on patrol, they called him a nightmare. You tap your fingers nervously against your leg. Imagine what it's like to patrol in places like South Armagh, where every parked car, every barn window, every bump in the hedgerow might hide a scope. You learn to walk without exposing a silhouette. You learn to run in zigzags. You learn that sometimes it doesn't matter. And then there's the political layer. The sniper didn't just aim for soldiers. He aimed for headlines. Every confirmed hit sent shockwaves not just through the military, but through communities, governments, and press offices. These weren't just tactical attacks. They were messages. By the late 90s, the British Army was rotating elite counter-sniper teams into Northern Ireland. Specialized units, advanced equipment, even helicopters. But they still couldn't catch him. It wasn't just his aim, it was his timing, his discipline. No greed, no recklessness, just one shot and disappear. Local folklore filled in the gaps. Stories about the sniper living alone in a hidden bunker. Stories about him being a priest, a school teacher, a former soldier turned rogue. One tale said he could shoot the antenna off a Land Rover at 1,200 yards without touching the windshield. Might be nonsense, might not. Then suddenly the shots stopped. The peace process advanced. Ceasefires began to hold. And just like that, the sniper faded from the headlines. No arrest, no body, no formal acknowledgement. Just quiet. Some believe he was part of the deal, allowed to walk away in exchange for silence. Others think he was never real, to begin with, a myth created to boost morale within the IRA and strike fear into British troops. But that's hard to believe when there are bullet holes and casualty reports to say otherwise. Want something extra strange? Years later, during a museum exhibition on the Troubles, someone anonymously donated a Barrett 50 cal rifle. It matched the serial number of the one used in those attacks. No note, no explanation. Just a piece of history quietly returned, like the ghost wanted to clock out properly. You pull your coat tighter now. The road ahead curves. Fog settles low across the hills, and your gut tenses. That feeling again, like something's watching. You wonder what kind of mind can lie perfectly still for hours, finger on the trigger, heart slowed to a crawl, just waiting for a figure to step into the reticle. The strange part, if you could talk to him, if he's even still alive, he might say he was just doing his job, fighting for a cause, protecting his people. War warps things like that, turns killers into symbols, rifles into legends. You breathe out slowly. Somewhere, maybe there's an old man sitting in a pub sipping tea. No one knows his name. No one asks. But a few still glance at his hands, checking for that quiet stillness. That sniper calm. Because once you've spent years with your eye pressed to a scope, watching life and death through a tiny circle of glass, the world never really looks the same again. You're leaning against a concrete barrier, heat waves rising off the road like ghosts. Iraq, mid-2000s. The sun is relentless. You're drenched in sweat, squinting through smudged sunglasses, scanning rooftops, windows, overpasses, anywhere a sniper could be watching. You've heard the name whispered, Juba. Not a man, not a myth. A specter with a camera, a rifle, and a habit of vanishing after every shot. The first time you hear about him, it's in the mess hall. Some guy from another platoon saw the footage. Helmet cam. A soldier steps out of a Humvee. Crack. The body falls. Clean. Fast. Then the fade-out Arabic music subtitles a list of names and dates. Juba's signature isn't just a bullet, it's a video. Juba operated in and around Baghdad during the height of the Iraq War. The US military called him a threat. The insurgents called him a hero. The internet called him a legend. He wasn't just a shooter, he was propaganda wrapped in a ghillie suit. And that's what made him different. Most snipers avoid attention. Juba, he craved it. After each successful kill, he or the group behind him released footage. Professionally edited, soundtrack included. The message was clear. We are watching you. You are never safe. His videos showed crosshairs hovering over unsuspecting American soldiers, the moment before the trigger squeeze, then the crack and collapse. Fade to black. Repeat. It was psychological warfare with cinematic production value. Soldiers began altering patrol routes, hugging walls tighter, flinching at every noise. He turned routine missions into horror shows. The identity of Juba has never been confirmed. Some believe he was a lone sharpshooter with military training, possibly ex-Iraqi army, maybe trained by foreign specialists. Others argue he was a rotating identity used by multiple insurgents to create the illusion of one unbeatable phantom. Historians still debate whether Juba was a man or a myth factory. But the bodies were real. The fear even more so. Juba used a Tabuk sniper rifle, basically an Iraqi-made version of the Dragunov. Semi-automatic, built for distance and reliability. Not the most precise weapon in the world, but good enough in the hands of someone with patience and intent. Especially when you're not trying to win battles, just headlines. You move through an abandoned district now. Hollow apartment buildings loom on either side. You glance at every window, every shadow. Somewhere out there, someone could be watching through a scope, waiting for a sliver of exposed skin or a slow turn of your helmet. It's not just the footage that haunts you, it's the voiceover. Calm, deliberate, translated subtitles praising the divine while recounting kills. There's a moment in one of the tapes where the camera lingers just a second too long on a soldier who doesn't even know he's been marked. That second stretches like taffy. You want to shout, warn him. But the shot comes anyway. Juba's work wasn't prolific in terms of raw numbers. Reports suggest fewer than 24 confirmed kills directly attributed to him. But his impact was exponential. For every soldier he hit, 100 others hesitated. The fear bled outward, invisible and paralyzing. Here's a quirky footnote: the videos were sometimes packaged with recruitment messages. Come join us, they'd say, and become like Juba. He wasn't just a sniper, he was marketing. Insurgency turned into storytelling. The West had high-tech drones and thermal imaging. Juba had Final Cut Pro and myth-making. And it worked. In late 2005, a wave of similar sniper attacks began cropping up across Iraq. Same angles, same weapons, same editing styles. Maybe it was copycats. Maybe it was training camps trying to clone the legend. Either way, the message stuck: one man can still terrify an army. The US military responded with intense counter-sniper tactics. More armored patrols, rooftop surveillance, algorithms to spot patterns in attack footage. But they never caught him, never even confirmed who he was. The trail vanished just like Juba always did. There's a chilling silence now as you step into a courtyard. The air is heavy. Your squad is moving with caution, but that doesn't matter when the threat is invisible. You remember the part of the training where they said, you won't see it. You'll only feel it. You're starting to understand what they meant. And just when you think the Juba chapter is closed, the sequel drops. A new video surfaces this time, calling himself Juba, the Baghdad Sniper. Same eerie music, same production style, different year. Some claim it's the original shooter returning. Others say it's someone else entirely borrowing the name to reignite fear. By this point, Juba is no longer a man. He's a franchise. The power of that story lies in its simplicity. One shot, one camera, one enemy soldier falling like a puppet with cut string. No need for speeches. No need for mass destruction. Just a reminder you are not invincible. You crouch now behind a concrete barrier, breathing slow, trying to stay small. Your radio crackles with chatter. Someone up ahead heard a shot saw movement in a building. But there's no follow-up. No confirmation. Just that quiet buzz of paranoia settling in again. Eventually, the war shifts. The surge happens. Urban combat gives way to broader operations. But the name lingers. Juba, like a curse. You hear it in chow lines and whispered jokes and late-night stories passed between soldiers too wired to sleep. And long after you leave the Middle East, something sticks. Every time you walk past a parking garage or look up at a high-rise, there's that moment you wonder if someone's watching. Someone patient. Someone still waiting for the perfect shot. Because Juba didn't just pull a trigger. He rewired your instincts. You're lying on a rocky hillside, now the air thin and dry dust clinging to your lips like ash. Below a cluster of enemy vehicles snakes through a ravine. You adjust your scope, nestled into a patch of broken stone, hidden under fabric and silence. You are not alone. To your left, a voice murmurs in Kurdish. A woman, calm, precise. She exhales and steadies her rifle. You're beside one of the Kurdish women snipers who've redefined modern warfare, not just with bullets, but with defiance. Welcome to northern Syria, the 2010s. The war against ISIS rages like wildfire through the desert, and from the chaos, something remarkable rises. The YPJ, the Women's Protection Units. Fighters, yes, but also farmers, teachers' daughters. Women who took up arms not just to protect their land, but to reclaim their place in it. And among them, snipers. Highly trained, highly motivated. Fighting with the knowledge that if ISIS ever caught them, they'd face horrors you can't describe in PG-13 terms. So they fought harder, and they aimed better. One name echoes loudest, Nisreen Abdullah. Not a sniper herself, but a commander who trained and led many who were. Her face covered in desert dust, her voice calm. In interviews, she spoke about freedom, dignity, and revenge in the same sentence. Her snipers weren't just warriors. They were symbols. Imagine this an ISIS fighter taught from boyhood that women are inferior walking into battle only to be dropped from 500 yards away by a woman he never even saw. That's not just a tactical loss. That's existential, psychological. And the YPJ knew it. Their rifles weren't just weapons. They were statements. Historians still argue whether the stories surrounding these female snipers were exaggerated for propaganda purposes. Some claim numbers were inflated. Others believe every kill was real earned and recorded. But regardless of stats, their impact on morale, both enemy and ally, was undeniable. You crawl forward now, rocks scraping your elbows. Your spotter a teenager with sharp eyes and steadier nerves than you points toward a shadow behind a shattered wall. You nod. The target's clear. A commander, they say. Important, dangerous. You align the shot, but your trigger finger hesitates. The woman beside you doesn't. Her round cracks the air like a whip. Target down. One shot, one fewer threat to her village. She doesn't flinch, just lowers her rifle and scans for the next. You glance over. Her eyes are tired, not from the fight, but from everything before it. Quirky detail. Some of these snipers trained in abandoned schoolhouses. Chalkboards still line the walls. Lessons on one side, kill zones drawn in chalk on the other. A strange blend of innocence and warfare. desks turned into sandbag walls, geography maps pinned next to enemy photos. Many of these women had never held a gun until their homes were attacked. Some came from conservative families where fighting, much less sniping, was unthinkable. But war doesn't ask permission. It demands transformation. And they answered. One sniper, Rahana, nicknamed the Angel of Kobani, reportedly killed over 100 ISIS fighters. The internet turned her into a symbol, a myth, a meme. Her photo rifle slung across her chest became a banner of resistance. But then she vanished. Some say she died in battle. Others say she went underground, her identity too dangerous to keep public. To this day, no one knows for sure. Her legend lives on anyway, and it wasn't just about vengeance. Many of these women believed they were building something, an entirely new society rooted in equality. The YPJ wasn't just a military force. It was a political one. They wanted to fight ISIS, yes, but also to challenge centuries of oppression. With every trigger pull, they aimed at patriarchy as much as terrorism. You rest your head against your scope now. The sun beats down. A breeze stirs the edge of your scarf. In the distance, you hear the low rumble of an engine. A pickup truck, armed and fast, weaving toward a village you just passed through. The sniper beside you is already adjusting for wind. She's done this before. One breath, one blink, one less vehicle to worry about. Later, as the fighting dies down, you watch her clean her rifle. Each motion slow, deliberate, meditative. You ask her what she thinks about when she takes a shot. She shrugs. My mother, my sister, a garden I want to plant someday. It's easy to romanticize these fighters. But they bleed. They break. They cry at night like everyone else. Some have lost entire families. Others still dream of becoming teachers, doctors, artists. Sniping is survival, not destiny. Still, there's something undeniably cinematic about the image a woman perched on a rooftop rifle, steady her long braid, catching the wind, as she watches a road her brother died on. She doesn't need revenge. She needs justice. And here's the fringe piece. Some female snipers began writing journals. Long handwritten notebooks hidden in supply crates or stuffed into coat linings. In them, poetry, battle logs, dreams. One wrote about seeing a butterfly land on her scope moments before a firefight. She didn't take the shot. Not that time. You lower your head now. The hill is quiet. The snipers are packing up. Another battle won, another inch of freedom reclaimed. You think about how history tends to forget women in war, but these women made it impossible to ignore them. They left bullet holes in the myth that women can't fight. And they did it with steady hands and steel spines. As the sun sets, you follow them down the hill. The wind kicks up dust. The silence that follows isn't empty, it's earned. You realize you've been walking beside history in real time. And tonight it smells like gunpowder and jasmine. You're perched on a crumbling rooftop, now eyes tracing the edge of a distant compound. Dust drifts off the walls in lazy swirls. You can hear the thrum of a drone somewhere high above, unseen but constant. It's modern-day Afghanistan, or maybe Iraq, or maybe Somalia. These days, war moves like fog. It spreads, then settles. But the sniper's role, that stays the same. You're the patient hunter, the slow breath, the unseen hand of consequence. This is no longer about camouflage and scopes alone. Now it's satellites, spotters with thermal tablets, and radios clipped to your chest. Still at the center of it all, there's you. One eye squinting through the scope, one finger resting on the trigger, one still mind navigating a battlefield that's equal parts ancient and digital. You track the figure moving down the alley. He's unaware, confident. Maybe too confident. He's been watched for days, maybe weeks. There were drone passes, intercepted calls, patterns observed. But you're the final decision. And it's not always easy. This is where the modern sniper lives, between intel and instinct, between the data sheet and the breath. You've trained your whole life for this. You know how to estimate wind drag. You know how different types of ammo behave in different altitudes. You know how to lie completely still while your leg cramps so hard it feels like it's trying to crawl away from your body. And then there's the target. Maybe it's a confirmed high-value insurgent. Maybe it's a guy with a radio you're reasonably sure isn't just asking his friend about dinner. You wait. Not because you're unsure, but because you're trained to let time confirm everything. Sometimes it's not about squeezing the trigger. Sometimes it's about letting the shot pass. Historians still argue whether the sniper's role in modern war has become less personal now, part of a wider machine, or more intimate, because the technology feeds you details the old marksman could only dream of. You know his name. You know what kind of car he drives. You even know what kind of music plays in the background when he calls home. And still you aim. Here's your fringe details some modern sniper teams now coordinate with aerial reconnaissance in real time. Spotters wear VR-style goggles that stream thermal drone feeds. You can literally lie on the ground and see a heat map of a building 2 kilometers away. It's not just crosshairs anymore. It's a chessboard viewed from a satellite, and you're the queen with a bolt-action checkmate. You shift slightly on your mat, adjusting the bipod. Your rifle is a modern beast, maybe a Barrett MRAD or the Remington MSR. Modular, suppressed, built for long-range punishment. Your rounds are match grade, the barrel free-floating, the recoil a mere whisper. But that moment, that final instant when the target drops, that hasn't changed in 100 years. One modern sniper, Sergeant Nicholas Irving the Reaper, became a legend for his deadly accuracy with a semi-automatic SR-25 in Afghanistan. He didn't just take out enemies, he took out entire myths. Enemies would move under the cover of darkness, thinking night gave them power. Irving was the reminder that infrared doesn't blink. Another Chris Kyle, the most lethal sniper in U.S. military history, with 160 confirmed kills, and nearly double that in unconfirmed ones. To some a hero, to others a symbol, his memoir, American Sniper, became a blockbuster. But beneath the fame was a man who carried every shot with him, because that's the other truth: a modern sniper doesn't walk away untouched. You adjust your breath. Down below movement. The man stops. He looks over his shoulder like he senses something. You tighten your focus. The crosshair rests over his chest, steady and silent. He steps forward, then stops again. A child appears behind him, skipping in the sun. Your finger freezes. The data doesn't prepare you for that. No algorithm replaces judgment. You lower the rifle. Sometimes the hardest shots are the ones you don't take. The best snipers aren't killers. They're decision makers. And that's a weight no bullet can carry for you. You roll onto your back and close your eyes for a second. The sun presses warm against your eyelids. Somewhere the drone still hums. The war doesn't end, but your part in it just paused for now. And that's the paradox of the modern sniper. You're part warrior, part philosopher. You calculate kill radius and ponder morality in the same breath. You download satellite maps while debating whether the person in your scope is really who the file says he is. One odd tradition persists. Many modern snipers carry cards in their notebooks, not playing cards, but photographs of their targets. Some tear them in half after the shot. Some keep them. Some burn them. Each act is a ritual, a way to mark the moment. Because in this job, detachment is just another form of damage control. Back at base, you debrief. You log everything. The wind, the angle, the time of day, how many shots, how many seconds. It all goes into a report fed into databases that track sniper effectiveness down to decimal points. You wonder what Häyhä or Zaitsev would think of all this data sheets, GPS coordinates, thermal scans. Would they call it cheating or evolution? You eat your meal in silence. No one asks if you took the shot. They don't need to. They've all been up there. They've all waited. They've all made the choice. Before bed, you clean your rifle like it's sacred. Every part has a name, every scratch a story. You check the scope again out of habit. You lay it down gently like it might still be listening. Because tomorrow, or next week, or next year, someone else will be moving across a distant ridge, and you'll be there again, watching, breathing, choosing. The sniper of today isn't just a marksman. He's a culmination of technology, of experience, of ethical restraint. His rifle may be silent, but his mind is never still. And somewhere out there, a shadow moves. You see it. You don't shoot, not yet. You're standing now in a quiet field at dawn. The grass is wet dew brushing against your boots. In the distance, the world is still asleep. No gunfire, no drones, no shouting. Just wind and birdsong. This is where we end, and where it always begins, inside the mind of the sniper. Not the weapon, not the war, but the human behind the trigger. Tonight, you step into the shadow where precision meets psychology. You've seen them across decades and continents. Simo Häyhä in the snow, Vasily Zaitsev in the ruins, Carlos Hathcock in the jungle, and modern operators watching satellites feed them patterns and heat signatures. But what links them all isn't the kill count. It's the mindset. The sniper isn't just a soldier. He's a thinker, a watcher, a ghost with a moral compass tuned to survival. His world doesn't move at full speed like the rest of ours. It narrows, slows, fades to a tunnel between the breath and the trigger. You lie down now in the wet grass. Close your eyes. Breathe. That's where it starts. Every sniper trains not just their body, but their nervous system, heart rate, blood pressure, even thoughts. Some use meditation, others use repetition, but all of them learn the art of stillness. And not just physically, emotionally too. You can't carry rage into a scope. Anger wobbles, fear twitches. The sniper's best trait isn't aggression, it's detachment. Cold, precise focus. Not because they're heartless, but because they can't afford to be anything else in that moment. Imagine waiting 4 hours for a single opportunity. Your legs are cramping, your nose itches, your stomach grumbles. But none of that matters. You wait, and when the moment arrives, your body moves like a machine. Breath, squeeze, exhale, silence, quirky truth. Some snipers hum to themselves while waiting. Others recite poetry quietly under their breath. Not out loud, just in the back of their minds. It's rhythm, it's ritual. Something to keep them anchored while the rest of the world spins and burns. There's a debate among psychologists, historians too, about what kind of person becomes a sniper. Some argue it takes a natural introvert, someone already comfortable with solitude and silence. Others believe it's more about control, a need to be the unseen force in a chaotic world. Maybe it's both. But one thing's agreed on: snipers come back changed. Because you don't just aim a weapon, you aim your mind. You carry every decision, not just the shots you took, but the ones you didn't. That's the difference between a kill and a judgment call. And that difference doesn't leave your memory, even when your gear is packed away for good. Chris Kyle wrote that the first time he pulled the trigger in combat, he felt nothing. No joy, no guilt, just focus. It was later, after many shots, that the weight came. In contrast, Carlos Hathcock said he hated killing, but did it to protect his brothers. Zaitsev saw himself as a necessary tool. Häyhä barely spoke about it at all. So what do you believe? Is the sniper a hero? A monster a technician? The truth lies somewhere in the middle. The sniper is a mirror. He reflects the purpose behind the mission. He doesn't make the war, he defines the edges of it. And for some, sniping is survival beyond the battlefield. One former Marine sniper said he still calculates distances when walking through cities. He watches rooftops, scans windows, notes reflections. It's not paranoia, it's conditioning. The world became a map of angles and consequences. You sit up now in the field, looking across the horizon. The sun is rising, spilling light across a world that rarely sees the sniper at work. Because you were never meant to. If you saw him, it was too late. One last fringe tidbit. Some snipers develop subtle tells habits they use to cope. A certain way they fold their socks, a phrase they whisper before firing, a charm inside their scope cover. None of it's regulation, but all of it matters. Ritual is the sniper's way of reminding themselves they're still human. You stand now brushing dew from your knees. You realize that this whole journey through frozen forests, crumbling cities, sandblasted hills, and haunted alleys wasn't just about who fired the most accurate shot. It was about what they had to become to do it. Calm under pressure, clear when chaos reigns, invisible when the world wants to see everything. There's a reason most of them fade into normal life after. They've had enough visibility, enough noise. They walk away from the battlefield and into the shadows again, this time on purpose. So next time you see a peaceful sunrise, a still field, or a quiet rooftop, remember that silence was made possible by someone who trained themselves to be the last thing anyone heard. And now, as the night settles deeper around you, let's ease the tension held in your chest. You've just walked through more than a century of whispered shots, measured breaths, and stories left out of most history books. The ground beneath these tales is cold and quiet, and the men and women who walked it did so slowly with purpose and often alone. You're back in your own room now. The field has faded. The rifle's been lowered. The wind is soft against the window pane. And if you listen closely, there's no crack of gunfire, just the faint hum of a world still spinning, still surviving. Let your breathing